The recycled air in Gerald Hartman's corner office had that particular staleness that comes from sealed windows and ego. I'd been standing in front of his mahogany desk for 7 minutes watching him read my resignation letter with the kind of smile people wear when they think they're about to win an argument. My name is Cassandra Reeves. I'm 38 years old, divorced, but finally optimistic about the future. Until that moment, I thought Gerald would at least have the professional courtesy to accept my 2 weeks' notice without turning it into a performance. This was the third resignation I'd witnessed in 18 months at Thornwell Capital Advisors. Gerald had a pattern. Whenever someone tried to leave, he'd spend 20 minutes explaining why they were making a career-ending mistake, why no other firm would value them, why they owed him loyalty for taking a chance on them. The departing employee's coffee would go cold on his desk. Gerald would lean back in his chair like a king on a throne. It was psychological warfare disguised as mentorship. Gerald had smiled when I'd first walked in. He'd even said, "Let's talk about this," when I'd handed him the letter. His tone suggested he was about to talk me out of a regrettable decision. Then he actually read what I'd written. I watched his eyes scan the page, the same letter I'd drafted and redrafted 17 times, trying to be professional while my hands shook with anticipation. It was brief, courteous, 2 weeks' notice as required by my contract. Gerald's smile changed. The paternalistic warmth evaporated, replaced by something that looked like contempt mixed with amusement. He set the letter down, leaned back in his leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and folded his hands across his stomach. "Cassandra," he said, his voice shifting from warm to condescending, "you'll never find anything better than this. You're nothing without this company." The words landed exactly how he meant them to, like a slap designed to make me doubt myself. "I appreciate everything I've learned here," I started. "Do you?" He laughed, actually laughed, "because I took a chance on you 6 years ago when nobody else would. Compliance officer with no Ivy League degree, no connections, just desperation and ambition." He gestured dismissively at my letter. "And this is how you repay that loyalty? By jumping ship to what, some startup that'll fold in a year?" In financial compliance, reputation is everything. The firms you've worked for, the executives who will vouch for you, the network you've built. That determines whether regulators take you seriously, whether clients trust your audits, whether you can actually do your job. When someone like Gerald, managing partner at a firm with $2 billion in assets, tells the industry you're disloyal or unreliable, doors close permanently. 6 years of building Thornwell's compliance framework from scratch. 6 years of late nights ensuring we passed every regulatory audit, of fighting with traders who wanted to cut corners, of protecting this firm from the kind of violations that destroyed careers. 6 years of being paid $30,000 less than male colleagues with half my experience, because Gerald said I should be grateful for the opportunity. And now this man who'd never personally conducted a single compliance review, was sitting there telling me I was nothing without him. "Gerald, I've accepted another position. I'm giving you the required 2 weeks to transition." "You'll never find anything better," he repeated, standing now, walking around his desk to tower over me. "You're making a mistake you'll regret for the rest of your career. But fine, if you want to throw away everything I've built for you, that's your choice." He smiled, cold and certain. "Just remember this conversation when you come crawling back in 6 months." I smiled back, forcing warmth I didn't feel. "You're right, Gerald. Thank you for everything." His eyebrows raised slightly. He'd expected me to argue, to defend myself, to give him the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Instead, I picked up my copy of the resignation letter, turned, and walked out of his office, through the trading floor where 20 analysts were pretending not to watch this interaction play out. I made it to my desk, logged out of my computer, grabbed my coat. Then I walked to the elevator, rode down 47 floors, exited into the parking garage, and sat in my car with the engine running and my hands gripping the steering wheel while I let myself shake. My phone rang immediately. my best friend, Alicia, who worked in legal 2 floors down. She'd probably heard about this already, because nothing stayed private at Thornwell. "Cass, please tell me you didn't back down." "I didn't back down," I said, voice steadier than I felt. I thanked him and left. "Good, because you know what he's going to do now, right? He's going to call every firm in the city and poison your reputation." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" I thought about the meetings I'd been taking on my lunch breaks for the past 3 months, the conversations in coffee shops 3 blocks from the office where nobody from Thornwell would see me, the contracts I'd been reviewing with lawyers Gerald didn't know existed. "I'm more than okay with it," I said. That night, sitting at my kitchen table while Alicia heated up takeout I wouldn't eat, I opened my laptop and reviewed the documentation I'd been building for 6 years. Every compliance audit I'd conducted, every regulatory framework I'd implemented, every violation I'd caught before it became a problem, all saved to my personal encrypted cloud storage with timestamps proving I'd created them. Gerald thought I was nothing without Thornwell Capital Advisors. In 3 weeks, he'd learn exactly how wrong he was. Before we continue, and trust me, watching Gerald's face when he finds out what I've been doing on those lunch breaks is absolutely worth staying for, I need to ask something. I'm trying to reach my first 1,000 subscribers, and right now, 91% of you watching aren't subscribed yet. If you've ever had a boss tell you you're nothing without them, I'd love your support. Just hit that subscribe button. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps me keep creating content like this. Let's get to 1,000 together. Now, let me tell you exactly what Gerald didn't know about those lunch breaks. 6 years earlier, I'd joined Thornwell Capital Advisors as their first dedicated compliance officer. The firm was growing fast, managing money for high net worth individuals and small institutions. They needed someone to make sure they weren't accidentally breaking the mountain of regulations that governed financial advisory firms. Gerald had interviewed me himself, looked at my resume, state school, no connections, 5 years at a mid-tier firm, and he said, "You're not what I usually hire, but I'm willing to take a chance." I should have walked out right then, but I needed the job. My divorce had been expensive. My ex-husband had been a lawyer who knew exactly how to drain our joint accounts legally. I was rebuilding from nothing. So I took Gerald's chance and spent 6 years proving I was better than every Ivy League graduate he wished he'd hired instead. I built Thornwell's compliance program from the ground up, created audit protocols that caught problems before regulators did, implemented training that kept our advisors from making career-ending mistakes, fought battles with traders who wanted to bend rules and won often enough that we never faced a single regulatory fine. Gerald's firm grew from $800 million to $2 billion in assets under my watch, not because of me alone, but definitely not in spite of me. And every year when I asked for a raise that would put me on par with my male colleagues, Gerald said the same thing. "You're already well compensated for your role, maybe when you have a few more years of experience." I had more experience than most of them combined. The meetings started 3 months ago, purely by accident. I'd been having lunch at a cafe 3 blocks from the office, far enough that Thornwell people rarely went there. A woman sat down at the table next to mine with her laptop and a cup of coffee that she forgot about until it went cold because she was so focused on her work. Helena Voss. I recognized her from industry conferences. She'd founded Vanguard Compliance Solutions 5 years ago. The firm provided outsourced compliance services to investment advisors who were too small to hire full-time staff, but too large to ignore regulatory requirements. She'd noticed me staring and smiled. "You're from Thornwell, right? Cassandra Reeves?" "Guilty," I'd said. "You're Helena Voss. I've heard good things about Vanguard." "Compliance world is small." She gestured at the empty seat across from her. "Join me. I'm tired of eating lunch alone." We'd talked for an hour that day, about the regulatory changes coming down from the SEC, about how most firms treated compliance as an annoying checkbox rather than actual risk management, about how hard it was to get executives to take your warnings seriously until something exploded. "You ever think about going independent?" Helena had asked. "Someone with your track record could make serious money consulting." I've thought about it, I'd admitted, but building a client base from scratch while paying bills? Terrifying. What if you didn't have to build from scratch? Helena had leaned forward. What if you joined an existing firm that needed someone with exactly your expertise? That was how it started. Over the next 3 months, Helena and I met for lunch every Tuesday and Thursday. She'd bring coffee, good coffee, the kind Gerald's office never had despite the firm's billion-dollar revenues. We'd talk about Vanguard's growth challenges, about the clients who were asking for more sophisticated compliance services than her current team could provide. I need someone who can handle the big clients, Helena had said one Thursday in early September. Firms managing over $1 billion in assets. They need someone who's been in-house at a large firm, who knows how the sausage gets made, who regulators will actually respect. That's a narrow hiring pool, I'd said. It's a pool of one, as far as I'm concerned. Helena had slid a folder across the table. I'm not just offering you a job, Cassandra. I'm offering you a partnership. 20% equity in Vanguard, your name on the door, 6-figure base salary plus percentage of revenue from clients you bring in. I'd opened the folder. The offer letter was real. The equity agreement was real. The salary was $40,000 more than Gerald paid me. There's one catch, Helena had said. I need you to bring clients. Your network, your reputation, your relationships. I'm betting that people who've worked with you at Thornwell will follow you to Vanguard once they know you're offering the same quality compliance work without being locked into a full-service advisory firm. That's a big bet. I know your work. I've seen the firms you've kept out of trouble. This isn't a bet, it's an investment in the best compliance officer I've ever met. I'd taken the folder home, reviewed it with my lawyer, had Alicia look at the equity agreement to make sure it was legitimate. It was better than legitimate. It was everything Gerald had spent 6 years telling me I'd never be good enough to deserve. I'd signed it 2 weeks ago, and this morning I'd resigned from Thornwell Capital Advisors. My 2 weeks' notice was uneventful by design. I documented every process, transferred every file, trained the junior compliance analyst Gerald planned to replace me with, a recent college graduate who seemed terrified of the responsibility about to land on his shoulders. Gerald didn't speak to me except when absolutely necessary. When we passed in hallways, he'd look through me like I had already been erased from the company's history. On my last day, he didn't say goodbye, didn't attend the small goodbye lunch my team organized, just let me pack up my desk and leave, as if I'd never existed. I didn't care. I was 7 days away from something he couldn't imagine. 3 weeks after I left Thornwell, Vanguard Compliance Solutions held a press event. Not a huge event. We weren't announcing a merger or an IPO, just a professional gathering at a nice hotel conference room, inviting compliance officers, financial advisors, and industry press to hear about Vanguard's expansion. Helena had planned it perfectly. Catered breakfast, professional presentation, glossy handouts. The room held about 80 people. A good turnout for a compliance industry event, which usually drew maybe 20 attendees who spent the whole time checking their phones. I stood backstage checking my appearance in a mirror while Helena reviewed her notes. "Ready?" she asked. "Absolutely." Helena walked onto the small stage, smiled at the audience, and began. Thank you all for coming. I'm Helena Voss, founder and CEO of Vanguard Compliance Solutions. 5 years ago, I started this firm because I believed smaller investment advisors deserved the same quality compliance support that billion-dollar firms have in-house. Today, I'm announcing the next phase of Vanguard's growth. She clicked to the next slide. My professional headshot filled the screen along with the announcement. Vanguard Compliance Solutions announces partnership. Cassandra Reeves joins as managing partner and chief compliance strategist. 20% equity partner. Former compliance director, Thornwell Capital Advisors. Cassandra Reeves is joining Vanguard as a full equity partner. Helena continued. She brings 15 years of experience in financial compliance, including 6 years building and leading the compliance program at Thornwell Capital Advisors. Under her oversight, Thornwell achieved a perfect regulatory record.
0 violations, 0 fines, 0 enforcement actions. I walked onto the stage. The audience applauded, not thunderously, but warmly. These were compliance professionals. We didn't do standing ovations, but the respect was there. "Thank you, Helena," I said, taking my position at the podium. "I'm excited to bring everything I've learned over the past 15 years to Vanguard's growing client base. We'll be expanding our service offerings to include comprehensive compliance programs for firms managing over $500 million in assets, including regulatory audit preparation, custom policy development, and ongoing compliance monitoring." I clicked to the next slide. Our initial client list. 4 firms, all of them Thornwell clients I'd worked with personally over the years. All of them had reached out to me in the past 3 weeks after hearing through industry channels that I'd left Thornwell and was exploring consulting opportunities. Combined assets under management, $3.2 billion. Combined annual compliance fees, $840,000. All of it going to Vanguard instead of staying with Thornwell.
The audience murmured. This wasn't just a partnership announcement. This was a significant shift in the compliance services landscape. After the presentation, advisors from other firms approached me with business cards, questions about our services, interest in scheduling consultations. By the time the event ended 2 hours later, I had 17 qualified leads. Helena and I had lunch at the hotel restaurant afterward, both of us slightly stunned by how well it had gone. 4 clients before we even opened our doors, Helena said, shaking her head. That's unheard of. They trust me, I said simply. They know I kept Thornwell out of trouble for 6 years. They know I understand their businesses. Gerald's going to lose his mind when he finds out. Gerald's going to find out in about, I checked my watch, 3 hours. The press release goes live at 2 p.m. I wasn't there when Gerald found out, obviously, but Alicia texted me a play-by-play because she'd positioned herself where she could watch his office through the glass walls. 2:17 p.m., Alicia texted. He just opened his email, Compliance Industry News newsletter. 2:18 p.m., his face is red, like actually red. 2:19 p.m., he's on the phone, yelling, can't hear what he's saying, but his door is closed and people are staring. 2:23 p.m., he just threw something. I think his coffee mug. Definitely his coffee mug. There's coffee on the wall. 2:31 p.m., he's calling people, lots of people, frantically scrolling through contacts. 2:47 p.m., update, he just found out about the clients. Someone from business development just ran into his office. Not looking good for Gerald. I smiled, sitting in Vanguard's new office, a modest space for now, but ours, and I sipped my coffee. It was still hot. Gerald called me at 3:15 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 3:47 p.m. Voicemail. At 4:20 p.m., he sent an email. Subject, discussion needed. Cassandra, we need to discuss your actions. Call me immediately. I didn't respond. At 5:03 p.m., my lawyer received an email from Thornwell's legal counsel. Our client has concerns about potential violations of non-solicitation agreements and misappropriation of client relationships. We request an immediate meeting to discuss Ms. Reeves' recent business activities. My lawyer responded within an hour. Ms. Reeves' employment contract with Thornwell Capital Advisors contained no non-solicitation clause. She is free to offer her professional services to any clients who choose to engage her. The clients who have contracted with Vanguard Compliance Solutions did so of their own volition after learning of Ms. Reeves' new partnership through public announcements. No solicitation occurred while Ms. Reeves was employed by Thornwell Capital Advisors. We consider this matter closed. I'd reviewed my employment contract 17 times over the past 3 months. Gerald had been so confident I'd never leave that he'd never bothered to include standard restrictive covenants. No non-compete, no non-solicitation, no client protection.
He'd left the door wide open, and I'd walked through it with $840,000 in annual revenue.
Over the next week, Alicia kept me updated on the chaos at Thornwell. 3 more clients, ones I hadn't even approached, called Thornwell to inquire about transitioning their compliance work to Vanguard. Word was spreading that the person who'd actually been doing the work was no longer at the firm. The junior analyst Gerald had hired to replace me quit after 2 weeks, overwhelmed and undertrained. Gerald tried to hire an experienced compliance officer from a competitor firm, but she wanted $180,000, more than he'd ever paid me, and she still said no after seeing Thornwell's compliance workload. Thornwell's next regulatory audit was in 3 months. Without a qualified compliance officer to prepare them, they were heading into it blind, and the industry knew it. 6 weeks after I joined Vanguard, the Regional Investment Advisors Conference came to town. 3 days of panels, networking, exhibition booths. Every significant firm in the area would be there, including Thornwell Capital Advisors. Helena and I had a booth. Nothing fancy. A table with brochures, a banner with our logo, 2 chairs. We were there to meet potential clients, answer questions, build our reputation. I was talking with a compliance officer from a $400 million firm when I saw Gerald enter the exhibition hall. He was with 2 junior partners, both of them looking uncomfortable. Gerald was scanning the room, clearly looking for specific people, specific conversations. He was working the room like he always did at these events, confident, commanding, selling Thornwell's services with the assumption that everyone wanted what he was offering. Then he saw our booth. He stopped mid-sentence in whatever conversation he was having, stared at our banner, at me standing there in professional attire, business cards in hand, talking to a potential client like I belonged there. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, anger, something that might have been embarrassment. He excused himself from his conversation and walked directly toward our booth. "Cassandra," he said when he reached us, voice tight. "Interesting to see you here." "Gerald," I smiled. "Good to see you. This is Helena Voss, my partner at Vanguard." Helena extended her hand. Gerald shook it mechanically, his eyes never leaving my face. "We need to talk," he said, privately. "I don't think that's necessary. It wasn't a request." Helena touched my arm lightly. "I've got the booth. Take 10 minutes." I followed Gerald to a quiet corner of the exhibition hall, near the windows overlooking the city. "You sabotaged me," he said, voice low but furious. "You stole my clients." "I didn't steal anyone, Gerald. They chose to work with me because they trust my expertise. Expertise I gave you. I took a chance on you when nobody else would, and this is how you repay me?" "You took a chance on me because I was cheap," I said calmly. "You paid me $30,000 less than my male colleagues doing the same work. You dismissed my warnings, overruled my decisions, and took credit for my successes. And when I left, you told me I was nothing without you."
"Because you are nothing without Thornwell's reputation," he started. "Thornwell's reputation was built on my work," I interrupted. 6 years of perfect regulatory compliance, 0 violations, 0 fines. That wasn't your achievement, Gerald. That was mine. And when I left, I took my expertise with me. You violated your employment agreement. I violated nothing. You never bothered to include non-solicitation or non-compete clauses in my contract because you never thought I'd be good enough to compete with you." I stepped closer. "You were wrong." His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "This isn't over." Actually, it is. Vanguard Compliance Solutions has 6 clients now. We're hiring 2 more compliance specialists next month. We're profitable and growing, and you're trying to find someone to replace me before your next audit. I smiled. Good luck with that. I walked away, back to our booth where Helena was talking to 3 potential clients, all of them holding our brochures and asking questions about our services.
Gerald stood by the windows for a long time, staring at nothing. Vanguard Compliance Solutions was thriving. We'd grown from 4 clients to 14. Annual revenue had hit $1.8 million. Helena and I had hired 3 additional compliance specialists and moved into a larger office with actual conference rooms and a coffee maker that made coffee people actually wanted to drink. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. My 20% equity stake was worth real money, and more importantly, I was respected by clients, by regulators, by the industry. Thornwell Capital Advisors, meanwhile, was struggling. Their regulatory audit in December had gone badly. Without experienced compliance leadership, they'd failed to maintain adequate documentation for several required policies. The SEC issued them a warning letter and a $150,000 fine, their first regulatory penalty in their history. 3 more clients left after that, citing concerns about Thornwell's regulatory compliance. Gerald eventually hired a compliance director from a competitor firm, paying her $200,000, more than he'd ever wanted to pay me. She was competent, from what I heard, but she was cleaning up 6 months of neglect, and that took time. I received an email from Gerald 8 months after I'd left Thornwell. Subject: Professional courtesy. Cassandra, I want to acknowledge that I underestimated your value to Thornwell. Your departure created challenges I hadn't anticipated. You built something significant here, and I should have recognized that more clearly. I'm not asking you to come back. I know that ship has sailed, but I wanted you to know that you were right about your worth, about your capabilities, about everything. I hope Vanguard continues to succeed. Gerald. I read it 3 times. It wasn't quite an apology. It didn't acknowledge the years of being underpaid, dismissed, undervalued. But it was an admission. Gerald Hartman, the man who'd told me I was nothing without his company, had admitted he was wrong. I forwarded the email to Alicia with 1 word: finally. She responded immediately: frame it.
Vanguard Compliance Solutions celebrated its 6-year anniversary with a company dinner at a nice restaurant. Helena and I had both dressed up, and our team of 9 compliance specialists filled a long table in the private dining room. Helena stood to give a toast. A year ago, we were a firm of 2 partners and 4 clients. Today, we're 11 people serving 23 clients with combined assets over $8 billion. That growth happened because Cassandra took a chance on us and because our entire team has committed to excellence in everything we do. Everyone raised their glasses. The wine was good, the conversation was warm. After dinner, Helena and I stood outside the restaurant waiting for our cars. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Leaving Thornwell?" "Not once," I said. "Best decision I ever made." "Even though Gerald spent 6 years making you feel like you weren't good enough?" "Especially because of that. He taught me exactly what my work was worth, by showing me how much he lost when I took it away." My car arrived. Before I got in, Helena said, "By the way, I got a call today. Thornwell's new compliance director is thinking about leaving. Apparently, Gerald is impossible to work for." I smiled. "Not our problem. Should I tell her about our open senior consultant position?" I thought about it for a moment. Thought about how good it would feel to hire someone else away from Gerald, to build our team with people who'd learned firsthand how much better life was outside his orbit. "Tell her to call me Monday," I said. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better, I could really use your help. I'm working toward my first 1,000 subscribers, and honestly, every single one makes a difference. It helps the algorithm show this content to more people who need to see it. It helps me keep creating. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment about a time someone underestimated you. Let's build something together. And remember this, when someone tells you you're nothing without them, they're really telling you they're terrified of who you'll become without them holding you back. See you in the next one.